Namaskar. Welcome to the fourth lecture session of the lecture series on the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, organized jointly by Kavi Kulaguru Kalidas Sanskrit University and Academy of Research for Cultivation of Indian Sciences. Within the ambit of its certificate course on consciousness studies and self-awareness. We have the same profound and eminent speaker today with us, Swami Atmapriyanandaji Maharaj, the Pro-Chancellor of Ramakrishna Mission Vivekananda University, Belur Math. I request Maharaj to enlighten us with his deliberations once he joins us.
Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnad Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavasishyate. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat. There is a very interesting chapter in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, Tritiyodhyaya, the third chapter, which is a remarkable debate in the court of King Janaka. You should realize how prosperous and rich our country was, and how the problems of daily life did not bother the common man, how high spiritual truths were constantly being discussed, cultivated, and implemented in daily life, even by the common folk, and how the various kings promoted this spiritual culture. One of them was King Janaka of Mithila. There were many other kings. Every king was vying with every other king for promotion of spiritual masters. If you think of those days, you feel like crying now. How our country has come to such a position in which we not only do not promote spiritual people, but unfortunately, we are interested in promoting the non-spiritual ones. Anyway, this is only a passing phase, as Swami Vivekananda said. Centuries of oppression, foreign invasion, and Hinduism lying prostrate at the feet of anybody who chose to walk over it, meekly, without resistance. Swami Vivekananda therefore said, Hinduism should be more aggressive, in fact, militant. He spoke of aggressive Hinduism, meaning that unless there is a manifestation of power along with spirituality, unless medha, superior, higher spiritual intelligence, is harmoniously blended with the Shri, prosperity, and power, the effectiveness of the spiritual truths is largely eroded. Sannyasa concept was not there in the Vedas. It perhaps came later on thanks to Buddhism. We had ascetics, we had avadutas, we had kutichakas and bahudahas Hamsa, Paramahamsa, Turyatita, peripatetic monks, Parivrajaka sannyasis, but not organized sannyasis of the present type. It was thanks to Bhagavan Bhashyakara Shankaracharya, the Darshanamay order of Sampradaya came to be organized. The rishis were not sannyasis in the sense that they were married people. They lived as a householder. They were running gurukulas with hundreds of pupils under them. And the education was something remarkable. What was the education? An illumined guru, Shrotriya Brahmanishtha. Shrotriya, well versed in the Shruti, in the Vedas. Brahmanishtha, devoted to the supreme truths. Here, Brahman could mean the supreme Brahman, or Brahma also mean the Vedas. Constantly devoted to updating of knowledge through debates, discussion, interactions, seminars, symposia. Shrotriya Brahmanishtha, Avrijina, sinless. Commercialization of knowledge was considered sin. You can't sell knowledge. Knowledge is too valuable to be sold for a price. The rishis never charged the students, and the entire expenses of the Gurukula were borne by the kings. The sponsorship idea. In place of kings, we now have the government. Avrijina, completely non-commercial, charitable, free. Akamahata, not smitten by small desires. Desire for award, desire for name, desire for position, nothing of that sort. He was silently cultivating spiritual knowledge, sharing that knowledge with everybody, and passing on that knowledge to the next generation of disciples. So, unbroken chain of Guru Sishya Parampara, teacher-disciple tradition, kept this Vedic knowledge alive, vibrant, burning, and powerful. Even to this day, the Upanishads and the Vedas are preserved in exactly the same way that they existed thousands of years ago. It's not a small task. In spite of the invasion, in spite of all the atrocities that were perpetrated here by the invaders, Shrotriya, Brahmanishtha, Avrijina, Akamahata, and Paramakarunika. A guru is a Paramakarunika, extremely compassionate. Even to the last disciple who is less talented, less intelligent, the guru reaches out, pulls him up. You have the famous story in the life of Bhagavan Bhashyakara Shankara. He had 4 famous disciples we know, and the 5th one was Totaka Acharya. Totaka was rather dull compared to the other 4, but is extremely devoted to the Guru, quite intelligent, but Gurugata Prana, surrendering himself to his master. This is very, very important. Shraddha in the Guru, in the knowledge that you are cultivating, in the institution where you are studying. The lack of Shraddha and Brahmacharya is responsible for the degradation of our education system now. This was the diagnosis of Swami Vivekananda. The Acharya was about to begin a class on the Upanishad. Totaka was engaged in Guru Seva. He was slightly late in coming. So the Acharya was waiting for the fifth disciple to come. The other four became restless. They were proud of their knowledge, their intelligence, and said, Totaka doesn't understand anything. Why should the Acharya waste his time for the sake of this dull disciple? Shankara could immediately read the thought. His compassionate heart melted in deep sorrow. What? You fellows? You think are more intelligent? Can you compare Totaka with any of the others? How devoted, how simple, how completely egoless he is. Then by Divya Sankalpa, divine grace, by a mere wish, he communicated all knowledge, transmitted knowledge to his disciple. These great acharyas. They are the avatars, the Bhagavan himself. They could communicate by a mere thought. And Totaka became illumined, and he was coming towards his master, singing this famous stotra called Totaka-ashtakam. Bhava Shankara Deshika Me Sharanam. So these are groups of Gurukulas. And all of them were sponsored by the kings. What a country it was. Hundreds of thousands of best brains in the country, constantly engaged in cultivation of spiritual knowledge. Now and then there used to be symposia, debates, seminars. Janaka was the person who used to call these. Janaka called a symposium of the great rishis of that time. Each of the rishis will come with a group of disciples. They belonging to various schools of thought. We have it in the Taittiriya Upanishad. Tadhitapas tadhitapaha nako maudgalyaha paurasishtihi. Maudgalya said this, Paurasishti said this. So many groups of rishis had their own views about the reality which they cultivated. Schools of thought. So Janaka, this is the third chapter of the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, was very curious to know which among these rishis was the greatest knower of the Vedas, Brahmishtha. Here Brahma means the Vedas, Brahmishtha means the greatest knower of the Vedas, the greatest Vedic scholar, not a scholar in the Panditi sense. Pandita means a person who is illumined. Shankara says in the Bhagavad Gita Bhashya, in the second chapter, Gata aso na gata asonscha nanusho chandi panditaha. Commenting on the word Pandita, Shankara says, Panda Atma Vishaya Buddhi Esham Te Panditaha. Panda is the knowledge of the Atman, the higher self, and a person who possesses this Panda is called Pandita. Brahmishtha means a person who is well versed in the Vedas. Thoroughly he knows the Vedas. The greatest knower of the Vedic lore, Vedic text, the implication of the Vedic mantras, Brahmishtha. He was very curious to know which of these great rishis was a Brahmishtha. He called a conference. Then he said, I have for you a huge prize, and I will give it to that person who is the greatest scholar of the Vedas, Brahmishtha. What is that? 1,000 cows. In those days, cows was a great wealth. 1,000 cows is a huge prize. And to boot, the Brihadaranyaka text says, in attached to each of these cows in the horn is a huge amount of gold. The amount is also mentioned. Dashapada, 10 padas of gold attached to the horn of each of these 1,000 cows. We made a calculation. 1 pada of gold is about 10 grams. So 10 padas is 100 grams. And the present cost of 100 grams of gold in Indian rupees is 460,000 rupees, 4.6 lakh. And multiplied by 1,000, it will be 4,600 lakh, which is 46 crore. Imagine, we talk about the Nobel Prize. Nobel Prize is not even a pittance compared to this. What was the respect which these kings had for spiritual knowledge, for the Vedic knowledge? The greatest knower of the Vedas, Brahmishta, shall get 1,000 cows along with 46 crore of rupees as calculated in the present context. That was the respect which these kings had for Vedic knowledge. He called all of them. Which one of you is the greatest Vedic scholar? May take these cows. Obviously, nobody dared get up. Who will claim, I am the greatest knower of the Vedas, Brahmishta? Yajnavalkya was a great rishi, the hero of the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Seeing that nobody is getting up, smartly got up, did not claim that he is Brahmishta, but asked his disciple Shamashrava, "Oh Shamashrava, take these cows home." The implication being that he was the Brahmishta, the greatest knower of the Vedas. Immediately there is a furor. Everybody is up in arms. Are you the greatest knower of the Vedas? Are you a Brahmishta? Then look at the humor of Yajnavalkya. Then he said, you see, I do not claim to be the Brahmishta. Yajnavalkya, Brahmishtosi, are you a Brahmishta? He said, Namo vayam Brahmishtaya kurumo gokama eva vayam. I bow down with great humility before a Brahmishta, if there is any in this audience, but I am desirous of these cows. I badly need these cows. Then ensued a debate which is a golden chapter, not only in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, 3rd chapter, and it is also a remarkably shining golden chapter in the spiritual history of India, Bharatavarsha. The Bharatiya Prachina Parampara has this as a shining chapter. Debate goes on. One by one, the rishis get up and ask questions. Entire Vedantic Upanishadic culture is based on debate, discussion, investigation, deep penetrative insight, analysis, never taking anything for granted. That is a scientific investigation of these great spiritual scientists called the rishis into the inner world of the spirit, the Atman, Brahman. I am tempted to read out, chant this portion to you, which is so beautiful, and reading it in the original Sanskrit and listening to it are so elevating. Music to the ears. Tritiyodhyaya. Om Janakoha Vaideho Bahudakshinena Yagyene Je Tatraha Kuru Panchalanam Brahmana Abhisameta Babhuvastasya Janakasya Vaidehasya Vijigyasa Babhuva Kastvidesham Brahmananam Anucha Natama Iti Saha Gavag Sahasram Avarurodha Dasha Pada Ekaikasyaha Shringayo Rabadha Babhuvu. Nikhilanandaji's translation into English. Om Janaka, the emperor of Videha, performed a sacrifice in which gifts were freely distributed among the priests. Brahmin scholars from the countries of Kuru and Panchala were assembled there. Emperor Janaka of Videha wished to know which of these Brahmins was the most erudite Vedic scholar, Brahmishta. So he confined 1,000 cows in a pen and fastened onto the horns of each of these cows 10 padas of gold. He said to them, Venerable Brahmins, O Rishis, let him among you who is the best Vedic scholar drive these cows home. None of the Rishis dared. Then Yajnavalkya said to one of his pupils, disciples, Dear Shamashrava, drive these cows home. He drove them away. Then the Rishis were furious and said, How dare that he call himself the best Vedic scholar among us? Now among them was Ashwala, the Hotri priest of Emperor Janaka of Videha, the court priest, the court scholar. He asked Yajnavalkya, O Yajnavalkya, are you indeed the best Vedic scholar among us? He replied, Yajnavalkya said, I bow down in humility, the best Vedic scholar, but I just wish to have these cows. Thereupon, the Hotri Ashwala determined to question him. The Yajnavalkya's sense of humor is mentioned here. Tam hovacha brahmana bhagavanto yovo brahmishtha sayetaga udajata miti teha brahmana nadadrushu atha Yajnavalkyasya swayameva brahmacharinam uvacha Eta somyodaja samashrava itita hodachakara teha brahmanas chakruduhu katham no brahmishto bruvite chatah janakasya vaidehasya hotashvalo babhuva sahainam papracha Tvam nu khalu no Yajnavalkya brahmishtosi iti sahovacha namo vayam brahmisthaya kurumo gokama eva vayag sma iti tagha tata eva prashtum dadre hotashvalaha. Then the debate ensues. First comes Ashwala, the court pandit, as I said, He goes on asking question after question. Yajnavalkya satisfies Ashvala by answering all his questions to his satisfaction. Then Artabhaga, with the line of Jarat Karu. Athahainam bhurjullagini papracha. Athahainam Jarat Karava Artabhaga papracha. Then comes Bhujurlahyayani. Bhujyu, the grandson of Lakhya. Atahainam Bhujurlahyayani papracha. After satisfying this Bhujyu, then comes Kaushitakeya. Kaushitakeya. Atahainam kahola Kaushitakeya papracha. Then Ushastha, the son of Chakra. Then comes Gargi, a woman rishi. Gargi is one of very important figures in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Gargi and Maitreyi are two great women saints, rishis. Maitreyi is one of the wives of Yajnavalkya, and Gargi is a rishi who is challenging Yajnavalkya. Look at that. A woman, a rishi, challenging the great Yajnavalkya in the open court of Janaka in unmistakable terms. Glibly we say that in India everything is based on faith. No. Faiths apart, there's open discussion, debate, symposia, interaction, questioning. And Yajnavalkya being challenged by this woman saint. Then he says, "Oh Yajnavalkya, if all this is pervaded by water, by what is water pervaded? Pervaded by air, Gargi. By what is air pervaded? By the sky, Gargi, Akasha. By what is Akasha pervaded? By Gandharvaloka. By what is Gandharvaloka pervaded? By the Suryaloka. By what is Suryaloka pervaded? Chandraloka. By what is the Chandraloka pervaded? The Nakshatraloka. By what is the Nakshatraloka pervaded? By Daivaloka. That is pervaded by Indraloka. By what is Indraloka pervaded? By the Virat. By what is the Virat pervaded? Hiranyagarbhaloka. Then she was about to ask, by what is Hiranyagarbhaloka pervaded? Then Yajnavalkya says, "Stop, Gargi. Don't ask too much." Atiprashna. That means you are asking about that supreme entity, Brahman, which is the all-pervasive reality, which pervades even Hiranyagarbhaloka, which cannot be talked about, which cannot be discussed. If you ask about it, the head will fall off. That means one should not argue too much with the knower of Brahman. Mere intellectual knowledge does not empower you to argue with the Brahmagyani. A person who has knowledge of Brahman, a Brahmagyani, should not be argued with by a person who has only bookish knowledge. So when we talk about debate, argumentative Indian, you should remember it's not argument for argument's sake based on the intellect. Intellect leads you up to a point and leaves you. It is a higher intuitive intelligence called Medha or Pragya, by which Brahmagyana is attained. A Brahmagyani should not be argued with beyond a point, because he talks from his realization, pratyaksha anubhuti, direct realization. Later on, Yajnavalkya will say, Yas sakshat aparokshad brahma. Sakshat, direct, aparokshad, immediate, without any mediation of the senses. Brahman is sakshat aparokshad brahma. A person has actually seen it. Like Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, the modern times, was challenged by Narain. Future Vivekananda, have you seen God? That means the Brahman, the supreme reality. Sri Ramakrishna answered, I have seen him directly, sakshat, aparokshad, immediately, just like I'm seeing you, but only in much more intense sense, much more intensely, and I can show him to you. But who wants to see God, my child? People shed jugfuls of dear tears for the wife and children, for money and fame and position. But whoever wants to see God, anybody who longs to see him and prays with intense feeling, he shall see God. This is a very interesting idea. You have to cry intensely within, long to see him. You can see him directly, immediately. Sakshat aparokshat. Athahainam gargi vachaknave papracha Yagyavalketi hovaja yadidag sarvam apsotam cha protam cha kaspin khalvapa otascha protas chediva yogar giti kasmin khaluvayurotascha protas chetantarikshalokesu gargiti kasmin khalvantarikshaloka ओताश्च प्रोताश्चेदि गन्धर्वलोकेषु गार्गीति कस्मिन् खलु गन्धर्वलोका ओताश्च प्रोताश्चेत्यादित्यलोकेषु गार्गीति कस्मिन् खल्वादित्यलोका ओताश्च प्रोताश्चेदि गन्धर्वलोकेषु गार्गीति कस्मिन् खलु चन्द्रलोका ओताश्च प्रोताश्चेदि नक्षत्रलोकेषु गार्गीति कस्मिन् खलु नक्षत्रलोका ओताश्च प्रोताश्चेति देवलोकेषु गार्गीति कस्मिन् खलु देवलोका ओताश्च प्रोताश्चेतीन्द्रलोकेषु गार्गीति कस्मिन् खल्विन्द्रलोका ओताश्च प्रोताश्चेति प्रजापतिलोकेषु गार्गीति कस्मिन् खलु प्रजापतिलोका ओताश्च प्रोताश्चेति ब्रह्मलोकेषु गार्गीति कस्मिन् खलु ब्रह्मलोका ओताश्च प्रोताश्चेति सहोवाच गार्गी माति प्राक्षीर् माते मूर्धा व्यपत्तदनिप्रश्न्यां वैदेवतामतिपृच्छसि गार्गी माति प्राक्षीरिति ततोह गार्गी वाचक्नव्युपरराम. This is the Sanskrit original passage. Then Gargi simply kept quiet. Then one by one, others are coming up. Uddalaka asked certain questions, which he answered. Then came Gargi once again. This is the final punch. We will discuss this portion, which is so wonderful. Gargi is now asking, daughter of Vachakna, Vachaknu, O venerable Brahmins, I shall ask Yajnavalkya 2 questions. If he answers me these questions, then none of you can defeat him in the discussion of Brahman. Then they said, ask Gargi, Pricha Gargi. Nikhilanji's translation. Gargi had been warned previously by Yajnavalkya not to push her inquiry too far and thereby lose her head. That means you can't push argument about Brahman beyond a point merely using your intellectual apparatus. You have to go beyond the intellect into the world of intuitive higher intelligence called Medha or Pragya, and intuit Brahman in the depths of your being without the intervention of the senses and the mind and the intellect. In order to ward off this danger, she now asks permission of the Brahmin scholars to question Yajnavalkya. After discussing the nature of conditioned Brahman, Saguna Brahman, the Upanishad proceeds to describe the supreme Brahman devoid of attributes. Yajnavalkya had warned Gargi, "Oh Gargi, don't ask too much. We're asking about that Purusha, that supreme being, which is indescribable. And if you persist in asking about that supreme, indescribable being, which cannot be described in words, then your head will fall off." That means you will be smashed, your ego will be crushed. Yajnavalkya had warned him once. Yajnavalkya told him, "Don't push me beyond a point." But Gargi will not leave so easily. Look at the spirit of Gargi, this woman saint. She said, "Oh Yajnavalkya, I am now going to challenge you." So he told the Brahmanas, the various Vedic rishis present there, "Oh Brahmanas, oh rishis, I am now going to ask Yajnavalkya two sharp questions. If he shall answer these two questions to my satisfaction, then nobody can defeat him in the knowledge of Brahman, and he shall take away these cows." Then the Brahmanas permitted her. So with the strength of the permission received from the community of scholars present, that's democracy, he asks for the permission and then asks two questions. First question, Gargi says, "O Yajnavalkya, I shall ask you two questions. As the man of Kashi or the king of Videha, the scion of the heroic line must string his unstrung bow, take in his hand two bamboo-tipped arrows, highly painful to enemies, and approach his enemies closely. Even so, Yajnavalkya, do I confront you with two questions. Answer me these questions." Yajnavalkya, "Pricha Gargi, ask, O Gargi." Kashi is Benares, and Kashi Raja and the inhabitants of Benares were extremely famous for their heroism. So look at the kind of audacity of this lady, the spiritual audacity, not egoistic authority, the confidence born of realization. As Swami Vivekananda once said to his Western disciple, childishly, that disciple was trying to control him on certain things. Then he says, "What? I, who have realized the spirit and the vanity of all earthly nonsense, worldly nonsense, to be spurred from my path by baby's prattle? Do I look like that? Pooh, sisters, you do not know the sannyasin. He stands at the heads of the Vedas, say the Vedas, because he is free from all conditioning." That is the power of realization. So Yajnavalkya is being challenged by this woman saint, Gargi. And then look at the language. "Oh, Yajnavalkya, get ready. I am going to throw at you two questions. Just like the king of Kashi confronts his enemies with sharp arrows, which inflict tremendous pain when they get stuck in the chest of the enemies. So am I going to throw at you these two questions, sharp questions about Brahman. Get ready. Nonchalantly, smilingly, Yajnavalkya says, Pricha Gargi, O Gargi, ask. So imagine the whole scene in Janaka's court. What a culture we had, you can imagine now. Groups of rishis, Brahmins, Vedic scholars had assembled. Each one of them had brought with him disciples, groups of disciples, representing numerous various schools of thought in the Vedic wisdom. So many people independently had discovered certain spiritual truths. Just like VK Science Congress. At the time of Einstein, there used to be the Solvay Congress, very famous physics scientific congress, Solvay Congress, where there's a huge debate between Albert Einstein on the one hand and Niels Bohr on the other. Niels Bohr was a remarkably great physicist. It was the contention about the probabilistic interpretation of quantum mechanics. Wave-particle dualism, which means that an object can at the same time behave like a particle or a wave. How can the particle have wave characteristics and waves of particle characteristic? Is it at the same time? Is it simultaneous? It came to be proved that a beam of electrons produces interference pattern, diffraction pattern, as if they are waves. And light, which is known to be a wave, produces a photoelectric effect, as if it's a particle. So what is the real nature of matter? Huge debate. Is it matter? Is it a wave? Just like we say, what is the nature of God? Does God have a form or does not have a form? Sakara or Nirakara? Does God have gunas, qualities, attributes? Or is he qualityless, attributeless? Nirguna, nirvisesha, or he is saguna, savisesha? What is he? Quantum mechanics proved he is both nirguna and saguna, both sakara and nirakara, both particle and wave. This completely revolutionized the thought process of what is matter and what is a field and what is a wave. Exactly the same thing was talked about in the spiritual realm by Sri Ramakrishna a few decades before Einstein. Just a few years after Swami Vivekananda, that God is with form and without form. He is both Nirakara and Sakara, without form and with form, and beyond both form and formlessness, and how many more things besides. In Bengali he said, Tini Shakar, Tini Nirakar, Shakar Nirakare Pare, Aro Koto Ki. The nature of reality can't be defined as this and not that. Einstein proved it scientifically, what nature of particle. De Broglie was responsible for wave-particle dualism. This was taken up by Schrödinger in wave mechanics, Heisenberg in quantum mechanics. Einstein somehow was very uneasy with the probabilistic interpretation of quantum mechanics. What is the nature of this wave? This wave is a wave of probability. Einstein said, how is it possible? Either it is there, it is not there. You can't have probability. The famous dialogue and debate between Einstein and Niels Bohr in the Solvay Congress, exactly reminiscent of the debate in Yajnavalkya's court between Gargi and Yajnavalkya, Janaka's court. Einstein said, I do not believe God plays dice. In a game of dice, you throw dice. Either it is 5 or 6. You can't predict what exactly will be the value that you will get when you throw dice. In the same way, he says, I cannot believe and I do not believe that God plays dice. And Niels Bohr quipped in reply, but you can't dictate to God what he shall do. Ramakrishna said, Tini Ichhamayi, Mahakali, the supreme reality, Sagana Brahman Ichhamayi, she is self-willed. You can't dictate to her, dictate to God what he or she shall do. So here is the debate going on in the Janaka's court, the last phase of the debate. When one by one, Yajnavalkya answered the questions of so many. Gargi had his turn once, and she was silenced by Yajnavalkya. But she is not a person to be silenced. The valorous, proud and powerful woman, a woman of great jnana, knowledge of Brahman. She gets up again and challenges Yajnavalkya. Yajnavalkya, before you claim to be the greatest Vedic scholar, to be able to claim that prize of 1,000 cows with 10 pada of gold in each of them, come on, answer 2 more questions of mine. And he bows down to the various scholars present there and asks them, please permit me to ask 2 questions of Yajnavalkya. If he shall answer these 2 questions, we can be sure that he is the greatest Vedic scholar and therefore eligible to claim these cows, prize meant for the Brahmishta. Then the Brahmins permitting her, she is asking this question. And she is in a threatening tone, telling Yajnavalkya, I am now going to throw 2 arrows at you. Just like the king of Videha, as a man of Kashi, might take in his hand 2 bamboo-tipped arrows, highly painful to the enemies, and approach the enemies closely. Even so, Yajnavalkya, do I confront you with these questions? I will read out the original, which is so beautiful to hear. Athaha vachakna vyuvacha brahmana bhagavanto hanta hamimam dvo prashno prakshyami tauchenme vakshati navai jatu yushmakamimam kaschad brahmodyam jeteti pritchagargiti. What is the question? Look at the question. Then he says the Kashi example. Saho vachaham vaitva yajnavalkya yatha kashyo va vaideho va ograputra vujyam dhanuradhijyam kritva dvobanavanto sapatnadi vyadhinau haste kritvopotishte deva mevaham tvadvabhyam prashnabhyam upodastham taume bruhiti pritchagargiti. The question is very interesting. Listen to the original. Sahovacha yadurdhvam yagyavalkadivo yadavak prithivya yadantara java prithivi ime yadabhutancha bhavaccha bhavishyachetya chakshate kasmigstadotancha protam cheti. The same Otaprota question. She was silenced at that time. She is again coming back. Gargi said, O Yagyavalkya, what pervades that sutra which is alone above heaven and below the earth, which is heaven and the earth, as well as what is between them, and which they say was, is, and will be. That means it is all pervading and it is timeless. The past, present, and future has no meaning because it is eternally present. It is the omnipresent and timeless eternal entity. The diverse objects of the relative universe became unified in the sutra. Gargi asks, what is that pervades the sutra? The warp and the woof pervade a piece of cloth. This is the unified field theory which Einstein was attempting to crack. This is in the spiritual realm, and in the scientific realm, Einstein said there has to be a unified field theory which unifies and in which all the various thoughts and ideas are connected, strewn as pearls in a string. Sutre Maniganaiva. So all these are pervaded in the sutra. Sutra is the Hiranyagarbha, Sutratma. Hiranyagarbha is the cosmic mind. The cosmic mind is the supreme entity of which all the various individual minds are parts. This is called Sutratma. This is called Hiranyagarbha. This is called Ishvara Saguna Brahman in some of the Upanishads. All the various beings and the various minds are parts of this Hiranyagarbha. And all the various minds which are thinking have their thoughts uploaded automatically and spontaneously in the supreme cosmic mind called the Hiranyagarbha, wherefrom any other mind can easily download. In the modern parlance, in the computer world of internet, where everything is interconnected through a cosmic server. So this Hiranyagarbha is a huge cosmic server through which all thought transactions become possible. When you send an SMS from your mobile phone to somebody sitting next to you, it doesn't go directly there. It goes via a server, and that server sends the message to him or her. The Hiranyagarbha is the cosmic server, the Sutratma, in which all our thoughts are uploaded. When I am speaking to you, the thoughts which I am now articulating, these thoughts get spontaneously and automatically uploaded in the Hiranyagarbha. And anybody in the universe, anywhere, past, present, and future, can download this thought. It eternally exists in Ishvara, in the Hiranyagarbha, what Stephen Hawking called the mind of God. If you want a modern example, it's a conscious Google. If Google had consciousness, rather than being insentient, this will be called the Hiranyagarbha, Sutratma. Now, this was answered by Yagyavalkya in the previous session with Gargi. Everything is pervaded by Sutratma. Now he says, what pervades the Sutratma? Very difficult, tricky question. If everything is pervaded by the Sutra, what pervades the Sutra? Sahovacha, Yagyavalkya is now answering. Yadordhvam gargidevo yadavak prithivya yadantara java prithivim ime yadabhutancha bhavaccha bhavishyachetya chakshata akashe tadotancha protam cheti. It's Akasha which pervades. Akasha is a very, very difficult concept to understand. I have a feeling, I can't prove it, it's only just a gut feeling, as they call it, that this was the Akasha which Einstein was in search of as a unified field. This unified field, the holy grail of physics, which Einstein spent almost all the years in later part of his life chasing this holy grail, is the Akasha. The Akasha is what pervades the Sutratma. Yagyavalkya said, Nikhilananda's translation, that, O Gargi, which is above the heaven and below the earth, which is heaven and the earth as well as what is between them, and which they say was, is, and will be, is pervaded by the unmanifested Akasha. Akasha is the Avyakta, unmanifested Akasha. Then Gargi is very pleased. Gargi says, I bow down to you, O Yagyavalkya. You have fully answered this question of mine. Now brace yourself for the other. Look at the challenge this lady gives. Now come on, get ready for the second arrow. The sutra itself is inscrutable to the ordinary minds and difficult to explain. How much more so then is what pervades it. Gargi applies a very interesting method. Suppose you give a very, very ordinary, mundane example. You know, many of the best batsmen get out for simple balls. Why? Because they're expecting something very powerful. Suppose a pace bowler, 130, 140 kilometers per hour. The ball is coming at such speed. And he is expecting that ball. And suddenly the pace bowler reduces the speed, gives a slow ball, he gets out. Because you expect a very powerfully fast ball to come to you, and when just the opposite happens, you are completely confused and confounded. That is the interesting point. So what Gargi now does is, when Yagyavalkya said, asked the second question, mentally he was prepared for getting the second question. Perhaps Gargi might ask, if Akasha is what pervades the sutra, what is it that pervades the Akasha? Perhaps he was getting prepared for the next question, having completely set aside in his mind the first question. First question having been answered, it has been set aside, and second question is being invited. And here is the clever Gargi, supremely intelligent, brave, powerful, a great Jnani, and well versed in debate. What she does is very interesting, the Upanishad says. She is repeating the same question. Because Yajnavalkya is waiting for the second. She is repeating the first question so that he can be confused. Yajnavalkya is not a man to be so easily confused. He repeats the same answer. The question and the answer are repeated only to emphasize what has been already stated. Sahovacha namastestu Yajnavalkyo maetam vyavochoparasmai dharayas deti pritchagar giti. Same question is repeated and same answer is given. Then Yajnavalkya Gargi says, Kasminnu khalvakash akasha otascha protascheti. Gargi said, Oh Yajnavalkya, what pervades the sutra, which is above the heaven and the earth, etc., and is akasha. Then she says, what pervades the akasha? Nikhilananda's comment. Evidently, Gargi wanted to put Yajnavalkya into a dilemma. The question appears to be unanswerable. The akasha is pervaded by the immutable Brahman, which can't be described, explained, spoken about. If Yajnavalkya cannot explain it, he would be guilty of what is called in logic non-comprehension. If, on the other hand, he tried to explain the inscrutable, he would be guilty of what is called contradiction. He is trying to catch him in what is called catch-22 situation. What pervades the akasha? What pervades the akasha is the immutable Brahman, which can't be spoken about, which can't be described, which can't be explained in words. And if Yajnavalkya can't explain it, that means Yajnavalkya does not know, he has not comprehended, and therefore he is defeated. On the other hand, if he tries to explain and explains it, he will be guilty of explaining that is inexplicable, describing that is indescribable, and speaking about something which is unspeakable. Ashabdamasparshamarupamavyayam tatharasam nityam agandhavachayat anarjanantam mahatav param dhruvam nichayatan mrityumukhat pramuchyate. Kathopanishad. Ashabdam masparsham marupam avyayam. It can't be seen by the eyes, heard by the ears, tasted by the tongue, spoken about by the vak, the speech, can't be smelt by the nose, can't be touched by the skin. Beyond the mind, beyond speech, beyond intellect, and beyond the senses. The Mandukya Upanishad says, in the waking state, the consciousness is outwardly directed, bahit prajna. In the dream state, it is inwardly directed, antah prajna. And in the deep sleep, dreamless state, it is prajnana ghana, mass of consciousness. So this Supreme Brahman, beyond all the three states, the Turiya, is neither outwardly focused Bahipragya, nor is it inwardly focused Antapragya, nor is it a combination of both Bahipragya and Antapragya, Ubhayata Pragya, nor is it a mass of consciousness, nor is it completely unconscious. It can't be seen, it can't be thought about. And it is universal, all-pervading. And this is one, eternal, non-dual, and of the nature of auspiciousness. Mandukya Upanishad. Let me chant the original to get the flavor of the Sanskrit and the majesty and the grandeur of the original. Mandukya Upanishad. What is the nature of Turiya? Chaturtha, the fourth state of consciousness, which is Brahman. Nanta pragyam na bahiv pragyam no bhayata pragyam na pragyana ghanam na pragyam na pragyam adrishtam avyavaharyam agrahyam alakshanam achintyam avyapadeshyam ekatma pratyayasaram prapanchopashamam shantam shivam advaitam chaturtham manyante sa atma sa vigyeyaha. Mandukya Upanishad. So this can't be talked about, this can't be described. So Yajnavalkya is now put in a catch-22 situation. He can't describe the indescribable. If he does it, he is guilty of contradiction. If he doesn't describe it, he is guilty of non-comprehension, the inability to answer this question. Let me see what he does. And can you guess what Yajnavalkya will do? Any of you? That's the genius of these rishis. Yajnavalkya has to answer this question. You know what he does? He says, O Gargi, the knowers of Brahman, the Brahmana Abhivadanti, the knowers of Brahman, they say that this is the nature of Brahman. He doesn't say, I am saying this. Because he'll be guilty of describing the indescribable. This is what the knowers of Brahman say, Brahmana Abhivadanti. This is used in the very other Upanishads also. Kena Upanishad, for example, says, Iti Shushrumad Purvesham Etaddad Vyachajakshare. This is how it has been described by those rishis, sages, saints who taught it to us. Idi Shushrumad Dhire Dhiranam Yosattad Vichachakshire. Ishavasya Upanishad. The rishi does not say, I am saying this. So it has been taught to us by people who knew. This is the humility and this is the way in which you describe the indescribable. Yajnavalkya, what pervades the Akasha? Nikhilananda's translation, 3:8:8. Yajnavalkya said, O Gargi, that the supreme entity, the knowers of Brahman say is the imperishable. It is neither gross nor subtle. Neither the short nor long, neither red nor moist. It is neither shadow nor darkness, neither air nor akasha. It is unattached. It is without taste or smell, without eyes or ears, without tongue or the mind. It is non-effulgent, without vital breath or mouth, without measure, without exterior or interior. It does not eat anything, nor is it eaten by anyone. Verily, under the mighty rule of the imperishable Lord Gargi, The sun and the moon are held in their respective positions. Under the mighty rule of this imperishable O Gargi, the heaven and the earth are held in their respective positions. Under the mighty rule of this imperishable O Gargi, moments and muhurtas, days and nights and fortnights and months and seasons and years are held in their respective positions. And the mighty rule of this imperishable O Gargi, some rivers flow eastward and some others from the white mountains, others flowing westward continue in that direction, and still others keep to their respective courses. Under the mighty rule of the imperishable O Gargi, men praise those who give, the gods depend upon the sacrificer, and the Manas, the forefathers, upon the Darbi offering. Whosoever, O Gargi, in this world, without knowing the imperishable, offers oblations and performs sacrifices, finds all such acts perishable. O whomsoever, O Gargi, departs from this world without having known this imperishable is miserable. But he, Gargi, who departs from this world after knowing Brahman is a knower of Brahman. Verily that imperishable O Gargi is never seen, but he is the seer. It is never heard, but he is the hearer. He is never thought of, but he is the thinker. It is never known, but he is the knower. There is no other seer than this, no other hearer but this, no other thinker than this, no other knower than this. By this imperishable, immutable O Gargi, unmanifest Akasha is pervaded. Then said Gargi, O venerable Brahmins, you may consider yourself fortunate if you can get off from Yajnavalkya just by bowing to him. None of you, I believe, will be able to defeat him in his arguments about Brahman. Thereupon, Gargi held her peace. This is the passage. I'm just reading out the original now. Kasmin khalvakasha otascha protascheti Sahovachai tadvai tadaksharam Gargi brahmana abhivadanti asthula manano ahraswamadirgha malohitamasneham achhayamat amatam avayu anakasham asangam arasam agandham achakshusham ashrotram avag amano achaid atejaskada apranam amukham amatram anantaram abahyam na tadashnadi kinchana na tadashnadi kaschana ye tasya va aksharasya prashasane Gargi surya chandramaso vidhruto tishtata ye tasya va aksharasya prashasane Gargi java prithibjo vidhrute tishtata ye tasya va aksharasya prashasane Gargi nimesha muhurta ahoratranyama ardhamasa masaritavas samvatsara iti vidhrutastishtantye tasya va aksharasya prashasane Gargi प्राच्योन्यानद्यश्चन्दन्ते श्वेतेभ्य पर्वतेभ्य प्रतीच्योन्या याञ्च दिशमन्वे तस्य वा अक्षरस्य प्रशासने Gargi तदतो मनुष्या प्रशग् सन्ति यजमानं देवा दर्वीं पितरोन् वायत्ताः यो वाये तदक्षरं गार्ग्यविदित्वास्माल्लोके जुहोति यजते तपस्तप्यते बहूनि वर्षसहस्राण्ये तस्य देवास्य तद्भवति यो वाये तदक्षरं गार्ग्यविदित्वा अस्माल्लोकात् प्रैति सकृपणोऽथ य एतदक्षरं गार्ग्यविदित्वा अस्माल्लोकात् प्रैति सब्राह्मणः तद्वाये तदक्षरं अदृष्टं द्रष्ट अश्रुतं श्रोत्रममतं विज्ञातं विज्ञातृनान्यततोऽस्ति दृष्टनान्यततोऽस्ति श्रोतृनान्यततोऽस्ति मंत्र नान्यततोऽस्ति विज्ञात्रे तस्मिन्नु खल्वक्षरे गार्ग्याकाश ओतश्च प्रोतश्चेति। साहोवाच ब्राह्मणा भगवन् तदेव बहुमन्येध्वं यदस्मान्नमस्कारेण मुच्येध्वं न वै जातु युष्माकमिमं कश्चित् ब्रह्मोद्यं चेतेति ततोह वाचक्नव्युपरराम. So this is the Akasha which is being pervaded by the immutable Brahman. There's a beautiful note given by Swami Nikhilanandaji based on Shankara's Bhashya. Inferential evidence regarding the existence of Brahman given in the text is as follows. 1. As from a lamp we infer the existence of the Maker, so from the sun and the moon we infer the existence of the omniscient God, the imperishable. Like a master controlling his servants, the creator of the sun and the moon compels them, although they are powerful, to rise and set, increase and decrease at a fixed time and place according to the fixed causes. 2. Heaven and earth are endowed with parts, hence liable to disintegrate. They are heavy, hence liable to fall. They are governed by the respective conscious deities, identified with each of them, hence they could follow independent courses. None of these happens because the imperishable, like a boundary wall, preserves the distinctions among them, keeps all things within limits. The unfailing index of the existence of the imperishable is the fact that the heaven and the earth obey a fixed order. This would be impossible where they are not a conscious, transcendental ruler. This is a very important argument. It's called Ritam Brihat. In the Kathopanishad, there is a statement about the all-pervading entity, the Supreme Brahman, who is immanent in all beings. This immanence is called Ritam Brihat. Brihat means huge, big. Ritam means cosmic order. It's a huge cosmic order which is called conscious entity Brahman. Who has made the heaven powerful and the earth fame? Rigveda. As in daily life, all items of income and expenditure are carefully calculated by an accountant appointed by the master, so are the various divisions of time controlled by their master, the imperishable. The fourth argument, they are conscious deities who identify themselves with rivers, that the rivers could whimsically change their courses, which they cannot do, but keep to the original courses. 5. Gifts would not be praised as a laudable work unless there is an imperishable agent to bestow the fruits of action. 6. Gods are powerful, yet they depend for their sustenance on the sacrifices and oblations of ordinary mortal. Such a humiliating position is possible for the gods only because they are under the mighty rule of the Supreme Being. In the Kathopanishad also, similar passages occur. You say, Bhayadasyagnistapati bhayat tapati surya bhayadendrascha vayuscha mrittur dhavati panchamaha mahadbhayam vajramudjatam jayetad viduramritaste bhavanti. For fear of the Supreme Being, the Agni is bright and powerful and gives heat. Surya is rising and falling exactly, following its course for the fear of the Supreme Imperishable Being. And the air and death, which is exactly keeping account of all the living beings. All of them are obeying the Supreme Imperishable Brahman, because it's a terrible fear. Fear means the cosmic order which is inviolable. This is the law. Just like we say, the violating the law will invite punishment. The supreme cosmic order, the law, which is a conscious entity called the Supreme Brahman. Bhishasmadvata pavate bhishodeti surjah bhishadagnischendrascha mrityurdhavati panchamaha. Taittiriya Upanishad. Taittiriya Upanishad also talks about the Bhisha, Bhiti. That means the inviolability of the supreme law given by the Brahman, the supreme conscious entity. Look at the beauty, look at the power, and look at the logic, look at the rationality, and look at the lucidity of presentation, and above all, look at and rejoice at the open, fearless debate in the court of Janaka among the great Vedic scholars and men of realization, the rishis, among whom is this woman, Gargi, getting up and challenging Yajnavalkya twice. Once she was snubbed, she is not giving up. Comes back again and pokes Yajnavalkya to pour out the highest wisdom and the most powerful language so that it elevates and fills us with tremendous joy, thrill, wisdom, and the courage to be able to follow and practice it. Swami Vivekananda said, Upanishads are the most powerful, like bombshell. Every page of the Upanishad gives you the message of Abhaya. Brihadaranyaka also talks about Brahman as Abhayam vai Brahma. Yajnavalkya tells the Janaka, O Janaka, you have realized the Brahman because Brahman is Abhaya, fearlessness, and you have achieved fearlessness as Brahman. Abhayam vai Janaka praptosi, Abhayam vai Brahma. That was lurking somewhere in the pages of the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. And it was the glory of Swami Vivekananda, the eternal glory. He brought it out from the Upanishads, the idea of fearlessness, Abhi, Abhi, Abhaya, Abhaya, and gave it as a powerful message for the whole world and particularly the Indians. Be powerful, be fearless, because Atmana vindate viryam vidyaya vindate mritam. From the Atman comes virya, power, and from vidya, knowledge, comes immortality. We are blessed that we could have access these Upanishads thanks to the infinite grace of Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda, who made it the property of the whole of humanity. Upanishads were called Rahasya Vidya, secret knowledge, and women can't read it, Shudras can't read it, all kinds of restrictions. Here is a woman saint mentioned in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, Gargi. Swami Vivekananda said, everybody should now study and contemplate and practice the Upanishadic doctrines. He said, I want India to be Upanishadic and not Puranic. The stories of the Puranas, the cock and bull stories you find in the Puranas, they are there in all religions. They have some purpose to give for children, unenlightened people, some stories. But they can't stand the test and scrutiny of modern scientific reason. So Swamiji said, go back to the Upanishads. We are blessed that we discussed this Brihadaranyaka Upanishad and a series of 3 lectures, and I am grateful to this organization for giving me this chance to describe. And my earnest request to all the listeners, please take up the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Wonderful translations are available. Swami Madhavanandaji, who was the 9th president of the Ramakrishna Math and the Ramakrishna Mission, translated the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad along with Shankara's Bhashya, and Swami Nikhilananda has translated all the Upanishads in 4 volumes, which are published by the Advaita Ashrama Mayavati. Originally, they were published in New York, Ramakrishna Vedanta Center, and it's just a simple, lucid, running translation, and you just read it and you will see how powerful, how elevating, how wonderfully illuminating these Upanishads are. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnad Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Tat Sat. Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.
Learning from the master is always an elevating experience. We are really blessed, privileged to receive the illumination from the master himself. I express my gratitude from the core of my heart to revered Maharaj. And this recording will be telecast tomorrow through YouTube for the people who are unable to attend this live session. With the permission of revered Maharaj, I put an end to this session.